listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, once again, is Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm a bit conflicted about this Flyers team right now. I think we just dive right into it, right?
To what specifically? Which area do you want to dive into?
You know what? I'm going to hit you with a controversial one, and I said it right before we started. As we sit here today, as bad as the Flyers have been this season, Philadelphia Flyers are 4 points out of a playoff spot with 2 games in hand over the team sitting there.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know how we got here, because literally last show we were talking about a 10-game losing streak and 2 fluky wins. Right? That's what we were looking at it as. They got to break it eventually. And, of course they're going to win 2 in a row because Arizona's terrible. But now we're sitting here a week later, and we talked about this, and we talked about the ball could kind of start rolling here because you're playing some bottom feeders. No offense to fans. But here we are a week later, and they kind of fed on the bottom feeders, bump in the road, but that's okay. And we're sitting here, and the Flyers have gotten 9 out of their last 10 points. What do we do with this information, Kevin? Help me here.
I don't even know where to begin, if I'm honest. So here's where I'm going to go with this. Let's start with what's on the screen, and then I'm going to try to go down maybe 3 different avenues at one time, if that's possible. If you would have gone back to the previous Wednesday, and they lose the way they do to the New Jersey Devils,
right?
Awful game, lack of effort. No, basically almost a no-show performance.
Just nothing.
Right, 3-0
for him.
Horrible, and looks like nothing's different at all. If you would have started going in, because I went on the air going into, and I think I said this last weekend because we had the first 2 games of this. I went on the air last Friday, and I never like to give predictions going into a game. I hate the idea of it because of the fact that, I don't sit there and go, oh yeah, they about the worst thing the most that I could say is, oh yeah, they should win a game like this because blah, blah, blah. Like I would have been saying that about the Arizona game for weeks on end. It's the worst team in the league. They've got 5 wins. They should win the game.
Right. They're sitting on 12 points this season.
Right. But I can't guarantee that. I'm not going to sit there and act like anything isn't possible the other direction. I went in and basically looking at the fact that they had lost 10, no improvement, making a coaching change. Everybody knew they were going to lose to Colorado on Monday, and then they do that on Wednesday. I'm like, there's no way. They are not going to win in Vegas. There is no way. And I basically said that. And they go out and they win. However you want to look at it, they go out and they win. Maybe it was just something that they were due for, and it just comes around at some point. Maybe they actually, for you don't win a game without, for certain parts, outplaying the team you're playing. I'm not trying to sit there and say they outplayed them the whole game. You don't do it, though, without being the better team at certain segments of the game. You got the lead. That's how it works. You got the lead. You stay in the game. You're there. All right. And honestly, they took a 2-goal lead in the third period of that game, and that probably helped more than anything. All right. So they win that game. Now you're going to go into the Arizona game. You're going to build off that. But that starts this last 5 games, that Vegas game. And if you would have said, starting with the Vegas game, hey, in the next 5 games, they're going to take 9 out of 10 points, 4-0-1, without telling you what the 1 is, everybody would have taken that. Because nobody went into that game, I think, me included, giving them a shot to win in Vegas. So
didn't.
So if that was the 1, then I think everybody's fine with the 4-0-1 record. Here's the problem. The 1 was not against Vegas. You won in regulation against Vegas. You won against Arizona. And I don't look at the Arizona game as any dominance. They were up 5-2 in the third period. They gave up a goal. That's how you got to the final of 5-3. All right, if you were up 5-2 on a team, you're pretty well in control of the game, and one mistake like that doesn't hurt you per se.
And
but
Arizona's not putting up a ton of threats, let's be honest.
They're not, but I didn't like the fact that it got to 3 with them. Because because it's like if you would have won that game 5-2, there's an element.
Good.
There's an element of that makes total sense, especially when everything was the way that it was, where you're sitting there going, got an early goal, gave an early goal up, then started to build again to get the lead. And, and at the end of a second period are going in with this type of lead, like
right
in a position where you know that you're in control. That's the best way I can look at it. Like you're in control of that game. You feel comfortable with it. And then you get to Tuesday and you play the Devils for the third time in the last 2.5 weeks, something of that nature.
Ending the season series, by the way, which is kind of weird.
And that's not even the only one. And I'm not trying to refer to like, hey, I'm not talking about not being the only one in terms of like, hey, they've played their 2 against Vancouver or their 2 against Calgary or whatever.
That's different.
I'm talking about like
division
they wiped out
rival.
Well, division I know, but like at the same time, they wiped out the Tampa series
quick
in 8 games, like 8 overall games. They played them 3 times, and they did the same thing with New Jersey. Like it's a little strange, yeah. But I don't look. I did not go in. I'm not going to sit there and say I didn't go in and go, hey, this is a winnable game. And here's the thing. I still stand by exactly what I was saying going into the week, which was if they won the New Jersey game, they were staring a 5-game winning streak in the face right there, right off the bat, because you looked at the 2 games that were next and you said, listen, you've got that lined up. You should be able to win those. New Jersey's already given you fits, so I can't guarantee anything there. But you look at what Montreal was doing at the time. You look at what Ottawa was doing at the time, and Ottawa actually got better as the week went on, by the way.
Yeah.
So I'm actually not surprised by the game that we had last night in terms of the closeness of it, the competitive nature of it, the way that Ottawa played down the stretch. Because actually, I watched the first period of the Ottawa game and go, this is the same team that literally almost earlier in the week, beat Florida 8-2 and beat Tampa Bay 4-0. Like, yeah, I expected way better coming in, especially for a team, by the way, that I found out they were here since Thursday.
Oh, really?
I think like they haven't played in a while, so they were in town already. So I heard. Like
I think the thing about Ottawa is they're such a young team, and there's definitely a lot of talent on that, right? Josh Norris, Brady Tkachuk.
I'll tell you somebody.
Guys like Alex Formanton.
I'll tell you somebody who
Thomas Shabbat.
There you go. I was going to get
he's
to
a
him.
horse.
Well, no. Well, and here's the thing. He is a horse, but he was directly, in my opinion, and like their head coach DJ Smith said something after the game that was along the lines of he was outstanding, blah blah. Yes, he's outstanding because he gave you 35 minutes in 61 and a half minutes that the game lasted. He gave you 35 minutes, even without the overtime. He had played more than any other player in a single game in this season. That being said, he was directly responsible for 3 out of the 4 goals that were scored. 2 of them went in off of him, and one of them, to be honest, I couldn't believe what I watched when I went back and actually saw the play in full in overtime. Because he tries to end around up the boards, try to get it out that way. It takes a bounce, it goes back, but he did that as if they were gonna just go right out of the zone, get a 2-on-1 probably or something of that sort. Even if it's a 2-on-2, I think he's thinking he can change there.
Right.
And he just stopped in the corner, and all of a sudden, as the play carries on and it's a turnover, he has this realization that I got to get back in the play.
I'm stuck.
And now starts busting it for where Sanheim goes to make the play. And I'm just watching. I'm going, so you quit on the play thinking it was out of the zone. And and it is a youthful mistake, but at the same time, that's exactly the type of game you're getting.
There's also some element of you're coasting a little bit because you've played 35 minutes.
But, yeah.
No, that was my point about Ottawa, though, is that they are a young team, and yes, there is a lot of talent there. When guys have a bad night, it's going to be a bad night because they don't really have that kind of veteran cornerstone guy to rally the troops, as it were.
Here's the thing. It is, if they even play 50% of what they were capable of, like they really didn't show up for the first period. They even play 50% of what they're capable of in the first period. That game's a loss.
Absolutely.
That game is a loss in regulation. I mean, let's put it this way. It was already there. You were 6 minutes away from a regulation loss to the Ottawa Senators after losing in a shootout to the Montreal Canadiens. It would have totally changed. Like, we would not be sitting here talking about, well, gee, would you take 4-0-1 and 5? Yeah, of course you would. But if it was 3-1-1, with the last two being, hey, shootout lost one out of four.
It's a whole different podcast today, to be honest with you. We're back on, what do we get for Claude Giroux if we're 3-1-1 at this point?
I think it should still be that, to be honest. Like, I sit there and I look, like, let's just like, you know what? And being that you brought his name up and we're on the Ottawa game, let's just go to this because happened last night too. And look, we don't have to repeat ourselves 20,000 times here,
right?
To talk about 10, 15 years from now when his career is long over, no matter how it ends, no matter what happens from here.
He's at minimum a Flyers Hall of Famer.
For sure. Minimum. And it's not even just that. He'll be much more appreciated, even with the lack of team success, way, way, way down the line.
Because the second he retires, you get all the old highlights. You get the shift. You get the spinning backhanded goal on the goal line against Columbus. You get the Winnipeg overtime goal where he skates into the boards with his arms out. Like, you get all the highlights the second he retires, and
Right. And so here's where I took it, because I wrote this in takeaways for today's game, or from yesterday's game. It's at this point, like, we can start to look at the uncertainty of his future for the rest of this season and kind of still map out what's attainable. So, like, I did this, and it's he's tied with Bill Barber, so he'll pass Bill Barber for second place in points. And maybe this is also a good time to bring this caveat into everything we talk about on this show. We are going to get into the broader spectrum of what's going on around the league, the uncertainty of the schedule as we're doing this show, which as usual, Sunday morning, it's still early in the day. Let's just wait. Actually, as we record this, there are less than 4 hours left until games that are on the schedule today.
Oh, and as we learned this week against Montreal, we can be making decisions up until about 2 hours before game time.
Correct. So just don't anything that we talk about today, we are talking about it with the
big fat asterisk on it.
No, not only that, but with the full knowledge that anything that we say looking ahead is not set in stone at all. No. I've been sitting here, Twitter's open in front of me, and it's been open, and I've been watching the updates roll in for about 4 days, which, by the way, I do need to file a complaint as we do. I did on Twitter yesterday too, because I actually did put it out there eventually. I'm like whatever the number got to yesterday mid-afternoon, because I know it increased by the end of the night. But I want to go back to Giroux in a second, so I know we're on this. But whatever the number got to, remember how last year when we talked about this, or last season, because it wasn't really last year technically, we would sit there and I'd tell you, oh yeah, we're all sitting here and we never thought we'd be doing this, but we're on the media site refreshing the page of who's on the list at 5:00 every night, right?
Yep.
There is no list on the media site. I'm not kidding you. Shout out to another website. I've shouted out like websites like Daily Face Off before, because they give you like that, the in the moment.
Here's who
your starters are tonight. Here's what the lines look like. All that type of stuff. Another good one is Left Wing Lock, and Left Wing Lock has a running COVID protocol list. Actually
They're
has a running
updating.
list. Yes.
Nice.
Because last night when I went to go check, the list was at 101 players. Now they do not have what they do not have is, in addition, because I think I read somewhere, I don't know the number of coaches that are in protocol.
A lot.
It's a lot.
It's a non-insignificant number.
Whatever it is, it's not insignificant. And here's the thing. All right, I'm gonna pull some of the coaches out. Not that the number gets any lower if you do this, but I'm just going to assume right off the bat that the 5 teams that said we're done until Christmas, probably their coaching staff is not available.
Fair enough.
I'm just taking a guess, but certain ones I know are true. Like Calgary's, I know. Calgary's head coach is Daryl Sutter is in protocol.
I know Sheldon Keefe just entered the list.
But Sheldon Keefe, the reason I didn't assume that was because, or add that in my head off of that, was because they're not one of the 5 teams that said shut it down until Christmas. Right. I mean, we are still seeing that too, by the way. We're still seeing it happened with, remember the rain. I hate bringing it up. The Ranger game on St. Patrick's Day. Well, because remember that game was coached by former Flyer assistant Chris Knobloch, who is Hartford's head coach, because they did not have a coaching staff that night. So it's possible that you can still say, hey, listen, the team can play, but the coaches are in protocol. It does happen. But I also saw last night something about 13 officials are in protocol too. 13 on ice officials are in protocol, which is another non-insignificant number.
And
or non-significant,
concerning
significant
because we've heard so much about on-ice transmission not being huge, and here we have some officials, and we don't know if it was transmitted, but
I think
officials.
And we'll get into it more maybe like to wrap up toward the wrap up of the show. But obviously, anything we do going forward is so. All right, so
that was our whole point of the deviation, was to let you guys know that if something changes between now and the publishing of the show, we'll throw in a little bit of an edit update. But after the show is published,
here's the other thing too.
Change.
Here's another thing too, because one of the things we had talked about last week was we're probably not doing a show next week because of the holiday weekend and all that stuff like that. Honestly, I'm not opposed to at some point I might make an update down the line.
Go for it.
Like in terms of if everything just gets postponed for a little while, like
we might do an emergency podcast.
We could. I don't, even if it's just a half hour quick one,
Absolutely.
Just say, listen, this is what happened. Where do we go from here and how long,
We might do an emergency
We
podcast.
might. We'll see. I don't feel like I feel like we're going to talk about the topic enough that, believe me, I'm tired of looking at it already. But
me too, man.
But it exists and I can't ignore it. That's the problem. So, all right. So the reason that I made a diversion here, because Claude Giroux ties Bill Barber in points. So that could change. He could move into second by himself as soon as Tuesday, assuming everything stays the way
he's been playing this season. Honestly, he's fairly likely to. Claude Giroux has been phenomenal. I
got to go back to takeaways for a moment, because I wrote down his little stretch in the last several games. I think what did I say it was? In December, which is 9 games so far for the Flyers, he has 4 goals and 4 assists. So he is near point per game when you consider, maybe look, take the one game that nobody scored in, the Devil game from a couple middle of last week.
Right.
And he's put something up in just about every game he's played. I mean, I think he's got points in 6 or 7 of the 9, which is
when the going
typical.
Gets tough, the tough get going. And Claude Giroux, 7-8 games deep into a losing streak, decided, no, we're done here, and just started putting up points.
I mean, the guy had 2 goals in a game that nobody would have given him a shot to win because the coaching change happened that day, and he came out looking like, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to put it on I'm going to try to put it on my back, and I'll see if I can't will us to a win myself if I have to. Like, that's pretty much what I saw that night, even though they weren't their best.
I agree with you.
And this is where we are. So he's going to and look, let's not act like, okay, schedule up in the air and all that stuff. Even whatever happens, they will play again at some point prior to March. I think that's safe to say.
Knock on wood.
I feel for right now, I think that's safe to say at the moment, unless we really see something crazy, like, and who knows? Everything's on the table. I'm not trying to say it's not out there, but like for right now, I don't think anybody can look beyond maybe the next 2 weeks just to. In general, like, let's just it's got to start somewhere and have like we hope that this is all that's needed, right? Like, it's got to start somewhere. Whenever they next play, like, my point being, the next game they play, this could happen.
Yep.
The next game.
The next time Claude Giroux plays regular season hockey, he could break this record.
Right.
Yep.
Then look, with a little bit more uncertainty at this point, absolutely you get into this territory. But let's just act like nothing's going to change, because, so far the NHL is saying we're powering through. If they can play, they'll play, right? Like that kind of stuff. All right, so let's just say
Colin Campbell changes. Has been adamant.
Let's just say that nothing changes with the schedule or whatever. So he's 17 points right now away from 900, which would make him only a second Flyer to get there. And he's 29 games away from 1,000 games as a Flyer. Again, only the second Flyer to get there. These are 2 things that absolutely 1,000% should happen.
You know what sucks? He can do that. He can play that 1,000th game, and then they can still trade him at the deadline if things are terrible. Oh, and that feels bad. I get it, but it feels bad.
No, but see, that's actually my point.
Right.
Because my point is, there's no reason why he shouldn't still hit 900 points, 1,000 games.
In your jersey.
If they still want to go that direction, which I still think needs to happen with where you are. I mean, like, let's go this way. You already said it at the top of the show. They're 4 points out of a playoff spot, right?
Yeah.
As long as they are 4 points out of a playoff spot, no matter what we think of the teams in front of them, no matter what we think of the direction of the season.
To be fair, one of the teams in front of them is Detroit, and we're not expecting that to last. But anyway.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it is, it is 6 days until Christmas, and Detroit is in a playoff spot.
You're not
the
wrong.
longer you're there, the more legitimate you are.
You're not wrong.
And for what it's worth, after all of the hype of, I'm trying to think of who it even was that we were talking about so much that, after all the hype, it was because the Montreal game was this week. After all the hype about how it was still going to technically be Cole Caulfield's rookie season, the guy who I think is probably making the best case for Calder is Lucas Raymond.
You're not wrong.
He's making a really strong case. I mean, for December, but he's making probably one of the strongest cases in the league. And look at where they are.
Also, I think it would be hilarious if Detroit makes the playoffs, only to get matched up with Toronto in the first round, and Tyler Bertuzzi can't play in any of your road games.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Because that's funny.
Yeah. But regardless of his status, like you're looking at these teams. Detroit, by the way, I think Detroit's played 31 games compared to the 29 that the Flyers have, so they're still 4 points up in the air.
It's a little early to use the phrase games in hand, but the Flyers have 2 games in hand.
It's also really early to use it because of the fact that, as we noted,
2 teams ahead of them.
No, that's actually not the reason I was going to say.
Okay.
The reason I was going to say is because, as we saw 2 seasons ago,
it's going to be points percentage.
You could go by points percentage, which 500's not getting you there.
Not now. Not right now. It's not. No.
So you could use a little more significance, in terms of everything. Because let's put it this way: think about it. If they would have, let's say they win the Montreal game, as opposed to, and the opportunity. By the way, the opportunity was there because you get a power play in overtime.
By the way, abolish the shootout. Just abolish. It's a skills competition.
It is, but
it's like resolving an NBA game with a dunk competition. Come on now.
Listen, I get you. I'm not trying to say that I love the shootout. This thing's been in the league for 15 years. They still don't have a guy who is good enough in shootouts.
You're correct. Okay, who shot? So it was...
In Thursdays? It was Couturier, then Giroux, then Atkinson. Which, for what it's worth, I saw this come out on Twitter right after the fact. I forget exactly who put it out there. But... that was actually like your 3 highest percentage players in shootouts in their careers or whatever it might be, which, for what it's worth, for everybody who goes, oh, they got nobody who can score in the shootout, they score at about the league average rate. Like,
they are 0-3 in the shootout.
The difference, yeah, I know, but I'm saying the difference is, you know what you don't have? You don't have, for lack of a better name, because it's going to come up probably later in the show anyway, you don't have TJ Oshie, who's a 50% shootout shooter, right, who is way above the average. You just have, the mean. You have the average, typical shootout shooters. I think what frustrates people more is like Claude Giroux's attempt. What was that? Like, there's nothing to it. He just goes in and throws it 5-hole as if the goalie's not going to close it up, Like
an NHL goalie can't block his own 5-hole.
Right. Make a move, do something. I mean, if you're going to go 5-hole, open him up a little more than that. Don't just try to catch him off guard.
If you're going to do that, go Kucherov no move. Like, make something happen. Yeah. Got to get the goalie going somewhere, but it's just disappointing when you lose a shootout 1-0 because Carter Hart gives you the chance. He makes 2 of the 3 saves, and I think it was Jonathan Drouin who scored for Montreal. But I mean, he makes 2 of the 3 saves. We need one of you to score. One of you. None of you can beat Caden Primo. Come on.
Well, and that was the other thing. Like, I'm sitting there looking at Giroux's attempt. I mean, Couturier's too, to an extent, and I'm going, do something, make a move on him, because of the fact that he's so young and inexperienced that. You should be able to you've got to move him around a little bit.
Get him moving, make a read.
And I don't want to deny that he's not a really good young goaltender. He should be a really good young goaltender for years to come. It's not that. It's just, move him around, do something. But
I like Sean Couturier a lot. Anybody who's listened to this show knows. I don't want Sean Couturier in my shootout lineup, generally speaking. He's just not that kind of player.
And he's seriously been like your best shootout shooter in the last whatever.
I know, and I know he's been successful at it. I just it still feels bad. We need someone better. You're correct.
Well, here we go back to like 2 episodes ago, because I've told you, how do you get a guy who does that really well? You know,
You got to draft and develop them because they don't hit
right.
the market very often these days. So
right, there you go. So anyway, back to Giroux for a minute, kind of, and then we'll go back to the games that took place. You know, we can see all of these things ahead for him, these milestones, these things like that. And you can still, like, to me, that's the place where you're at this moment. You can still have that conversation, that discussion about what's his future hold, where is it going, because of where the team's going, and yet you don't need it to be, you know, like, you can still look at those milestones ahead and know that there's a good chance. Like, there's a lot of stuff right now. And Giroux status wasn't going to change for a while. Like, you're not talking. You can talk about who you think they need to move and blah blah blah, but like, no one's going to do any of that stuff now. It's not going to happen now. It wasn't.
No, when you've won 4 or 5, nobody's going anywhere right now.
It wasn't even based off of that. It's just when you're in the middle of December, nobody else is out. First of all, in the middle of December, no one's really thinking it to begin with, and then on top of it, given, you know, I already hinted at it, 5 teams are shut down, and how many players are in COVID protocols. You're not exactly moving players in the middle of situations like that either. Like, you're just more or less, you're actually trying to figure out, where is this going? What is happening? Like, you don't even know what tomorrow holds, let alone what a week or a month from now or 2 months from now holds. To jump ahead in your brain, like, normal
hunkering down a little bit.
Normal seasons you can have, and this is where it's going to get complicated, if I'm honest. Because normal seasons, you can have this conversation. Like, like, there's a part of me that feels like I'm talking about things that as if everything is still normal. And I'm not trying to say like obviously things are not normal. I would know firsthand.
Every show we've done for almost 2 years has been shrouded in COVID. Like, we all know what we're living in.
Right. And here's my thing. Like, because what I mean when I say everything, like, acting as if everything's normal, it's what I mean by acting as if everything is normal is, in a normal circumstance prior to everything with COVID and all that type of stuff, if you felt like you were going in this direction, you could already start to kind of in your mind deviate the plan. Hey, when the deadline rolls around, this is how we're going to approach it.
We're X weeks out. Here's the plan. Yep.
Right. That's the first part. And then when it comes to drafting and developing, because you could look around the draft pool and go, well, who's lighting it up right now? And you had a whole body of work to go off of. You don't have whole bodies of work anymore, because you've got players like we can sit here all day and ask ourselves, like I it's almost unfair to me when I sit there and I go, well, they've drafted in the middle all those years, so you're getting middle of the road type players when you draft in the middle of the draft, in the middle of the first round the time.
And apparently when you draft second.
Well, they don't even have that player anymore, so I don't even go there with that, you know. But you get those types of players then, but it's almost unfair for me to look and sit there and go, like, okay, they drafted Tyson Forster in the same kind of range. He was a 22nd pick, 23rd pick, something like that, yeah. Right? But it's unfair to look at him the same way, because you sit there and you go, well, when they drafted him, nobody had played since March of that year, and the draft was in October. And then after that, he didn't even get a CHL season. He just got to jump straight into the minor leagues. He's still in the minor leagues. Now he's hurt in the minor leagues, when realistically he might still not have played at that level. But here's the hard part with that. How do you sit there and go, come play in the minors, because it'll give you some form of action for a year, and then go back? They're doing that with Zayd Wisdom, which is, to their credit, the right decision. But it's a lot harder for the number 1 pick of your draft class to sit there and say, listen, you had a really good year, and you could be off to a decent enough start this year that we should send. Like, it creates this tough thing. So development goes all over the place, and it's not easy to sit there and look at a kid and say, well, you had a really good year in the OHL or the WHL or whatever. Go back for one more year, and then you'll turn pro at like 20, and we'll see where it goes from there. And then you're targeting like you wish that you could take, I guess, for lack of a better term, and it's relevant because his name has come up in the news a little bit in the last couple of days. You almost wish you could take, and it's not the perfect example because he's been hurt, several times through his career, but you almost wish you take the Wade Allison approach, which is here's a guy who plays in college for 4 years. Now, CHL players can't go that far, but you almost wish that you could look at a guy when you draft him at 18 and go, 4 more years, and we're not going to hear about you much other than just keeping an eye on what you're doing in college or whatever.
Yeah, just put your head down, put in the work, and
but put in the work, but also get the time, because it's not that easy to just keep grabbing guys. Like it's why when I see the question, I see a lot of people who sit there and go, "Are we, like people sit there and ask the question a lot." Well, if let's say they decide to blow it all up, like a lot of and I had hinted to it as well. Like I think they should who do you even keep from it? And obviously the first name that comes up is Carter Hart, because you see it, right? Like, take away the game that he didn't get to play on Saturday, which we'll get into, obviously. But he nearly steals you a game that you were pretty much trying to lose at times in Montreal.
No kidding.
He almost steals that game for you because he's playing outstanding.
He almost gets 2 points in that game. Just straight up wins the game.
Right. He quietly gives you a really great game against New Jersey.
Yep.
And against Vegas, he was your best player to snap a losing streak. And even the game before that, because the Devils game before that, where the rest of the team looked awful,
he looked really solid.
He gave up 2 goals. So he's not the problem. I mean, I think I added up, and of course it became totally null and void by Saturday, but he had stopped something like 124 of 132 shots in the last 4 games. His save percentage was something like 942 in the last 4 games. His last 4, I should say, which to that point was New Jersey, which, you know what it was? From the moment he got pulled against Tampa Bay, that after that game, he's posted a 942 save percentage. So if you thought that, hey, getting pulled in the middle of a 5-0 game that turned into a 7-1 game against Tampa Bay was, oh no, shades of last season, he bounced back real quick.
He bounced back hard.
I almost one of the lines I wanted to use, and I didn't for obvious reasons, was after watching the Thursday game, and I didn't use it because of the way that things were trending already, and they've only gotten worse since. But I almost wanted to sit there and say, listen, if that was your audition, playing in Montreal against the Canadiens, nearly stealing a game that your team should be winning, no question.
Right.
If Team Canada was watching, you might have won the job right there.
Man, and we talked about this big fat asterisk, and a lot of that has to do with the Olympics potentially not happening.
But my point was, coming into this year, was he even on the radar?
I think
he was an outside candidate. Like, everybody talked about, they needed it. Obviously, it wasn't going to be Carey Price. We all knew that, just given his whole situation. But it was Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be in the discussion, and then I think I'm trying to think of the others, because
Jordan Binnington
was in, right. Binnington was in the conversation. I think there was it wasn't Matt Murray at one point. I mean, years ago it was Matt Murray who was talked about, but it
12 months ago, before last season, I saw Carter Hart on a lot of lists.
Oh, sure. But then the way last season went, everybody kind of pulled back.
Out.
And all of a sudden he was like the 5th or 6th option. Like people almost threw his name in as if to say, listen, the kid, when you go back and remember what he did in World Juniors, 2 years in a row, gold medal game appearances, loses one in a shootout, shoulders it for a year essentially, and then says, I'm going to go be the best goalie in the CHL for the year, and then goes back to the World Juniors the next year and wins the whole thing. The
kid shows up on the international stage.
And he's already done. I can't tell you that's clout for him, in the sense that
he's already done work for Hockey Canada.
Right. So, you sit there and you go, 4 years ago. Look what you did 4 years ago in World Juniors. It's 2017 World Juniors. By the end of it was 2017 World Juniors. It goes into 2018. That's right. So he's doing all of that, and within a year, he's going to turn pro, and he's going to be in the NHL by the end of that calendar year. Less than a year after winning the gold medal, he's going to be playing in the NHL. Which, by the way, that anniversary was yesterday. So shame that he was not available to play. And although,
sure was.
Hold on, not that I would have been opposed to Martin Jones starting that game anyway. To be honest, You had to be able to throw him a bone somewhere in there. And with what's coming up,
I don't know if you do.
Look, I see your point. I just know
Hart's been pretty good.
I just know how coaches work.
I also think Mike Yeo is coaching with some with very few restraints. I think he's coaching he's
He
coaching
is,
his best.
He is, but I think also one of the things he's doing is because we touched on it. If you're 4 points out of a playoff spot this morning, you're coaching to win as much as you can.
Yes.
Like,
especially with that interim tag.
Well, because you know that your future of the job relies on whatever. And to be fair, let's kind of I'm gonna change the tab over here because we're not really on Claude Giroux as much anymore. But I'm going to change the tab to this because this is a good way to look at the last 5 games, which he's coached 7, by the way,
right,
as the interim.
I'll give him I'll give him a pass on the Colorado game. To me, his record starts after that.
I mean, it doesn't in reality, but you're right. No, but you're right. Like he
took control 12 hours before the game. That's not his game.
Right. You because the essential point of it was, I mean, this isn't true to say it, but it kind of is. You show up at the same time you would for your typical morning skate.
Exactly.
And somebody tells you, oh, by the way, well, although I don't think that was true, but
you think it happened after the game, after the Monday game?
It's not that I think it happened. I don't think.
You think Elaine Vigneault knew he didn't need to show up to work the next day?
No, that's not what I think happened. Because I don't think it was like that. I don't think Elaine Vigneault knew I'm not the coach of this team on Sunday. It was Sunday, right? Yeah. So I don't think he knew on that Sunday night.
It was Sunday, Monday, the back-to-back.
Right. Yeah. I'm saying, so he still found out on Monday morning. I think that maybe somebody sends a message of some sort, like even if it could be Chuck Fletcher sending a text to Mike Yeo saying, listen, well after everyone, goes their separate ways for the night.
At 4 a.m.
Well, or like maybe 1 a.m. sounds more realistic, but you know what I mean? Like, because here's the thing. Yo comes in the next day and explains how he didn't get a lot of sleep the night before. I don't think you're losing sleep over, well, it was a really bad set. Right. It was just a bad 7-1 loss.
Not as the assistant coach.
Right. Like, if everything is fine and you have another day to try to prepare and be better, I mean, you're feeling the heat because the losing streak's bad, and maybe that does keep you up a little bit at night, but I don't think you're losing that kind of sleep in terms of like, hey, like you can feel something brewing, or something already.
Also, I'll say it. I don't really know how much I see Mike Yeo doing during this 5-game point streak. To be honest, I think he's doing okay. He's letting the players play. He's not getting in the way, but I don't know how much I see him actively doing, if that makes sense.
Okay, because here's the thing. He's already said you can't just tear down everything that they've been doing the whole year and expect them to go out and play well. You got to build somewhat off of that. He keeps going into certain areas. Like first it turns into it can be a work level thing. It's building off. It's building good habits. It's building confidence. There's certain little elements that come into play for them that you just try to build on one little thing at a time. Maybe it's exits. Maybe it's puck management. Maybe like you just hone in on one area that needs to be better, and you do a lot of those things. You do a lot of film work, and you don't change up like, hey, listen, look, I've got a whole system, and I'm the coach now. So
you subtly shift the direction.
This isn't this isn't the Captain Phillips meme that goes around where it's I'm the captain now, I'm the coach now. We're going to do this my way. Like he's not going to come in and do all of that when you've been an assistant coach and you know what you've been like. The only way that happens is if you hire a brand new coach mid-season and say, hey, I haven't, and the guy comes in and goes, I haven't been here. I'm not going to go off of what you guys have done. I'm going to watch what you've done, and I'm going to make tweaks to it big time. Right. Like that's what a new coach from the outside does. But
a guy who's been in the system all year.
But I want to but in saying that, this is where I want to go with this. I want to touch on another coaching change, if you will, that happened this week. And
before we do that, but like real quick, Mike Yeo's a former head coach.
Yeah.
And when you watch your boss do his job, there are certain things where you're like, I could do it better than that guy. So I wonder if Mike Yeo's been making notes all season. Oh, Elaine made them do lines 6 times. I would have done 5. Little notes like that. I'm curious if he has a little bit of a playbook in mind already. Because he's been watching this team all year, and he's a former head coach, right? He's got to be looking at this as an opportunity to get back on an NHL bench, even if it doesn't end up being permanently with the Flyers.
It's interesting because that's the dynamic that we talked about from day one with them.
Three head coaches.
Three head coaches behind the bench, and I don't, look, I don't know what goes into all this or whatever. Like, it just sometimes you got to look past all that type of stuff. I think that's reading into it a lot. I mean,
that's fair.
Look, here's the best. I guess here's the best way I can say it to some extent, which is, listen. If you were a former head coach like Mike Yeo is, you're probably right about what you're saying to an extent, because you go, it looks like anything else. If you work for a company and you're not the boss, but let's say you're a manager and
you're looking to move up,
but you're high enough in the ranks that you sit there and you go, like, I have to start thinking critically about what my job is, because there's an element of that to my job. I'm not the main person here in charge,
right?
But listen, you never know. Like, we're talking about COVID things going on in the NHL, right?
You if a guy called into service as the head coach at any time,
right? If Alain Vigneault gets put on COVID protocol, then you could say Michel Therrien or Mike Yeo could step in and be the head coach for the night if they're able to coach.
We've seen a lot of assistants do that this year,
right? But you have a guy who's been a head coach, so on one hand, you're in a spot where you could fill in if the big, I guess this is the best way to put it, because I think even AV said it at one point. I'm like, if the big boss is not in, or the big guy is not in place, if he's not there that day, like, it's your boss takes a day off. So who's running the show that day for the people that are there? You might be.
Right.
And there's a certain element of, like, if you go into a meeting, you listen to somebody talk, you have your ideas of your own in your head. And you sit there and you listen, and in your back of your mind, you might not say anything in the meeting. You might go along with everything because this is the big guy. This is the guy who keeps you employed for the most part. But in the back of your mind, you might go home that night and inventing, sit there and say, you know what? I can be better than this guy. I'm better than this.
Absolutely.
I have a better idea than that. I could do it better than this. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like,
you're not suggesting that an NHL coach has an ego, are you?
Oh, please.
We might touch on John Tortorella later.
If you couldn't tell, I just for people who watch on YouTube, I just kind of gave that John Tortorella, like, that smile, like, like that,
John Tortorella. Okay, so something that we haven't really mentioned, and we talked about it a little bit before the show. Somebody came back last night.
Yeah.
My boy, Joel Farabee's back.
Okay,
man.
so let me bring him up, because this is actually a really good segue, because we talked about the lack of development for players and guys coming up early.
Kevin, I have a question. Did he score last night?
Kind of.
Did he score? Is he credited with a goal on the score sheet last night?
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Goal Farabee, baby. He's back.
Okay. Yes, he's technically credited with a goal.
A goal is a goal. They don't ask how. They ask how many.
And he's got 8 this year and missed 7 games, so that's not too bad.
And went on a decent little drought there, too. Trust me, I have him in fantasy. It was a decent little drought.
Well, they all did, for what it's worth, but whatever. Anyway. So that's funny you bring him up, because this is exactly where I wanted to go with the players who get, like, the development of players and things like that. We all start the conversation of, well, if you were to build the whole tear it down, build it all back up, who's the first guy that comes to mind? Carter Hart's the first guy that comes to mind. Makes all the sense in the world. Joel Farabee is on that list for me.
I think he's very high on that list.
And the reason is because you can't look at him. For a 14th overall pick, certainly middle of the pack by all standards in terms of where in the draft.
Like we talked about earlier, right?
He's given you at 20 and 21 the production that you need from a player to sit there and say, you know what, there's a future here.
Yep. I think if you redraft that draft, I think he goes top 10.
Possibly. I mean, I'd have to go look at everybody else's name. You're going to make me do it now.
Oh, I'm going to pull it up real quick. You keep going.
Yo, I'm gonna look too.
That was 2018. I believe they were talking about it on the.
It was
about a little bit on the broadcast last night because Brady Kachuk was also a member of that draft class.
and he's a good player. But to be quite frankly, didn't notice him all that much last night.
All right, I'm gonna rattle off the 13 names before Joel Farabee, and you tell me if you would draft this person ahead of Joel Farabee or not. So first name on the list is Darlene. Would you? If the answer is yes, you would take Darlene over Farabee, or no, you wouldn't.
Yes, given that, okay, and do I have to explain?
No, we're just gonna rattle through them real quick.
Well, because my point is, I know he plays for Buffalo. He's still got a lot of talent. It's Buffalo.
I think we're gonna rattle through these real quick, and then we'll go back on and touch on any you want to talk about. All right. So Darlene.
Yep.
Andrei Svechnikov.
Absolutely. Andrei Svechnikov went exactly where he belonged. You could argue he's had a better career to this point than Darlene.
Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
Third, no, but top 10 probably.
Ahead of Joel Farabee, yes or no?
Yes, by maybe like a couple picks.
If you're the GM and they're both sitting there, would you take next is Brady Kachuk?
Yes, I take Brady Kachuk first.
Fair enough. Barrett Hayton.
Tough one. I mean, they're really close together. Again, it's kind of
I've reached my first no for the record.
Yeah, it's really close. I think you got something there.
Philip Zadina.
See, haven't seen enough of him at the NHL level. Like what I do see at the NHL level,
close.
That one's tougher. All right. You know what I'm gonna do with this? Actually, I'll play the game this way for you. And Barrett Hayton is a little different for me. Like I agree with you. I think on that one, Philip Zadina at the time of the draft itself. If I was faced with that decision, I was taking Zadina.
No, that's fair. I'm saying now, knowing what we know now.
No, I understand that, but that's where I'm going. Like I'm sitting here going, Zadina's got a future, Farabee's got a future. They both kind of are like almost. Farabee's probably played more games, but it's, you know what I mean. So like, right. I still think I probably take Zadina first, but it's close.
Quinn Hughes.
I take Hughes first.
Yep. Adam Bachquist.
Yeah, Adam Boquist is a tough one.
It's a tough one. I think I'm taking Farabee, but it's very close. Adam Bachquist is good.
All right, so caveat. Some of it depends on your needs because he's a defenseman. So if you were looking for defenseman, he's probably still like all right, he's still the third. Well, never mind. You know what? I'm taking Farabee before Boquist.
You're taking Farabee before Boquist. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, you'll get my reasoning as we go down the list.
Vitaly Kravtsov.
Farabee first. That's been a disaster. Knowing what we know now, that situation's been a disaster.
It's been rough. Although again, hindsight's 2020, so who knows? Evan Bouchard.
That's really close. I really like Bouchard. See, this is where I was going with this.
This is where you go on needs.
Well, I go on needs, but here's the thing. This is why I said take Farabee over Boquist, because as I go down the list, Bouchard's been better than Boquist so far. I take Bouchard over Boquist.
But do you take Bouchard over Farabee?
Well, for that, it's like it's tight, and by that point now, I'm already we've already put at minimum 6 players ahead. That this is 7. Depends on what I need now, because now I'm getting into what I need. So tie. I call it a tie. It's a push.
Okay. How about Oliver Wahlstrom? I'm taking Farabee. I like Oliver Wahlstrom a lot, but I'm taking Farabee there.
Wahlstrom's been a product of being able to play less significant minutes and not have to play special teams because the team makeup has allowed him to. I think
the more traditional progress, the more traditional development path.
Well, and here's the thing. I think he's going to be there with Farabee down the road. Like they both correct me if I'm wrong, they both came up through the same program at the same time.
They were both development team. Correct.
Right. So they were both high profile. Let's just say
they could have been line mates for all I know.
If I go back and I remember watching that draft the way that I do, the more Wahlstrom was supposed to go like 6 or 7 or something like that.
He slept for sure.
The more that he fell, especially once he fell out of the top 10, people were going crazy about the possibility of that.
I was very invested in this draft from a fantasy hockey perspective.
I believe it.
I was deep in on this draft. I had like 3 top 15 picks in this draft, so I was all in. So Wahlstrom or Farabee? Who we got? right
today.
now?
Today, Farabee,
Okay.
but it's gonna get by the end of the whole thing. It's gonna be close.
Noah Dobson.
We're still
Remember,
kind of in. I'm still kind of in the what do you need territory, but Dobson's probably had an even better career than Bouchard has at this point.
yeah.
Like Dobson's probably the third best defenseman out of that draft to this point.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I like him a lot, and he's shown me a lot. So
You take
that's
him
a
over
really,
Farabee?
it's really, really close. Yeah. I mean, like we said, by this point we're talking about like an 8th, 9th pick, and I'm picking what I need. And if I really needed a defenseman, I would have been thrilled to get Dobson at that spot. So yeah, it's probably Farabee's going to have more of the production. Dobson's been a really good stay-at-home type guy. He's who can move the puck. So he just hasn't Dobson hasn't had a chance to show his full skill set yet, in my opinion, because they've got good defensive depth. The Islanders do, even though it's not showing yet this year.
One more name on the list, Ty Dellandrea.
I take Farabee.
Still developing. I'm taking Farabee over him. Skimming through the rest of the first round.
Ty Smith has been pretty good.
Ty Smith has been pretty good.
Keandre Miller's maybe one of the other guys.
Keandre Miller's a standout. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Keandre Miller might be a little bit. I might maybe I want to pull back on what I said about Dobson for a second because Miller's playing even bigger minutes.
And
already.
then we've seen Rasmus Sandin play a lot of minutes for Toronto this year, and he's been good.
He has. I still think there was a reason he went that late.
Fair.
Man, the Rangers freaking cleaned up in that draft, didn't they?
By the way, that 2018 draft is stacked. Like, we just talked about a lot of talented guys.
I mean,
I know we're talking about the top 10 in a fairly recent draft, but
hold on.
There were almost no misses.
Well, because here's the thing: I just said the Rangers cleaned up in that first round, and I say that with full knowledge. They drafted Kravtsov and missed because he won't play for them. But Miller and Lundqvist are like, holy hell, that's a good two defensemen that you've got for your team. Yeah, but Lundqvist is really good too.
Yep. I believe he just scored his first the other night.
Very recently.
Yeah, within the last couple of days. So, I guess shout out to him, but he's a Ranger, so I guess not.
They are where they are, you know?
So, I think we've kind of talked out what we can talk out about the Flyers. The future's kind of uncertain, but
right.
As of right now, you do have games on Wednesday and Thursday against Washington and Pittsburgh before the Christmas break. Again, we'll see if they happen, but as of right now, those games are both on. If the team that shows up in the first period against the Ottawa Senators shows up against Washington and Pittsburgh,
or for the whole game against New Jersey, but your point still stands, yeah.
Right. Then
for four periods.
If that team shows up in these two games against Washington and Pittsburgh, going into the Christmas break, going into potentially other breaks, I think that's a really good, if they come back from Christmas, if there is no extended break, I think that's a really good building block to work off of. And you get to come back with, even if you don't win the two games, if you pick up 3 points, if you show up, have a good effort.
There should be nothing surprising about what's happened in the last 5 games to an extent. I mean,
we talked about it. It's bottom feeders.
Okay, there shouldn't be,
but
there is an element to it, and I'll explain it this way. You started that stretch not knowing when that streak was going to end, so it's not like 10 was the defined marker. Listen, it just so happens that over the course of the last 5 years, there was another 10-game losing streak. There was a 10-game winning streak. You're getting these really round numbers here when you do that, right? It just so happens to be that way.
We talked about 10-game segments. We had an episode.
Well, hold on. See, it's funny. It's funny you say that, too, because they are through 9 of the next 10 after the 20 games. And basically, Chuck Fletcher came out and spoke after 20 games, I think it was. And this was literally 2 games, a game or two before they fired Alain Vigneault anyway, even though they were sitting here saying, we're going to play it out. Because he tried, the purpose of that whole conversation was, well, in the first 10, we looked better than we are now.
Right.
And we went 6-2-2. And then the last 10 haven't been so good. We've chased the game. We're giving up a lot of opportunities. We're not playing well. And they were 2-6-2.
Yep.
So
we end up where we always end up. After 29 games, the Flyers are exactly 500. Welcome to Flyers hockey, baby. Welcome to Paul Holmgren hockey, baby.
Okay, well, hold on. So here's where I'm at with this. The point I'm making when I talk about this is that because right away I think they lost the first 2 games of the next 10 before making the coaching change. And then they lost 2 more after making the coaching change. So to the point where I'm sitting there going, all it takes, or no, I know what it was.
Just one after the coaching change, wasn't it?
Well, technically 2.
Oh, right. The game to New Jersey. I'm sorry, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Right.
Alain Vigneault was fired at 8 games in a row. So 8 losses in a row, and then there were 2 more that followed. I'm trying to think of where I was at with this now. I'm thinking about it because I wanted to say that they played, because I feel like they played more than that. Because I looked ahead, I was trying to think about it. They had lost whatever 20 games were in the books. And then I knew looking ahead, I'm like, look at the 6 games. There were 6 games ahead of you and you could lose all of them. That was my thought.
Yeah, it was after the back-to-back with the New York teams. The Islanders game ended up getting postponed. You were looking at that Rangers game and then 3 days off after that. And then you come back and you play.
But I'm trying to figure out where it was, like wherever 20 was.
Right.
To sit there and say, so okay, so Boston, I'm looking at the Boston game on November 20th was 16, so 17, 18, 19, 20. So 20 was the New Jersey game. The press conference came leading into that day off that popped up because of the Islanders COVID situation.
Right.
So it was the Rangers game. So there were 2 games already in the next 10 that you went, okay, they already lost 2. Then they lost 2 more. Vegas wasn't looking good. Oh, I know what it was then. Because the franchise record for winless streak was 12. And in my mind, I sat there and I went, if you lose the next 5 from the day that you're talking, which was Rangers, Lightning, Avalanche, and New Jersey, and go into the weekend against Vegas and Arizona.
You hit it.
It wasn't that there was a real chance. It was, I don't see you beating Vegas if you lose those 4 in a row, which they did.
Right.
And then good luck against Arizona, even as the worst team in the league, because you are on an 11-game losing streak with 0 confidence.
You also have an argument for worst team in the league, right?
Well, because I'm sure it's gonna. You know what? I didn't bother to look after last night's game to actually see what's changed in terms of their ranking. I'm sure it's a little bit. No, it's not. Never mind. They are still 24th in the league, but they're tied. They're tied with Columbus for 23rd, technically. Not really in points percentage, but you get the point.
Well, right.
Although they are better because of the fact that like they're better in points percentage than Vancouver, who's on a roll, by the way, since their coaching change. Which did you see Liam McHugh, who hosts the TNT stuff, who has put out twice in the last week, really looking forward to the Flyers Canucks Stanley Cup final.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
And then it was which I get what he's doing. It was funny. It was a joke.
Man, the Hockey Guys YouTube channel would be very interesting.
Regardless, like there are 29 points in 29 games, ironically, but there are 29 points in the standings, and another win, one win to get to 31, depending on what everybody else does. There are 7 teams in front of you within 2 points.
Wow.
Like you go from being, hey, guess what? The bottom's not that far away. There's only 8 behind you to there's only 7 in front of you to be in the top 18 again.
Right. Guess what? The playoffs aren't that far from you either. Right.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like this happens every year. The distance between, oh, you're back in the playoff race and you could be one of the final playoff teams, and the difference between being one of the true bottom feeders in the bottom 5 of the league is usually a matter of 5 points either way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you could be in the playoffs with 5 points the right way, or you could be at the very bottom. And at the time, they were near the bottom. Like I legitimately sat there and looked and I went, listen, if Buffalo wins another game, if Seattle wins another game, Vancouver's coming on because of what they've done since their coaching change. If it continues, you're going to be like 28th in the league before you know it. And what happens next after that? Like, where do you keep going from there, and how much longer before we start talking about you in the same breath as? And listen, there's still an element of this for me for a team with four
Say what
games.
you want to say. At what point do they start cutting bait?
No, it wasn't that for me, because I knew when it was. Like, I knew it wasn't December. You kind of are just stuck riding it out. But my point was, is that how long before you could have come, like, there was a way for me to look at it where I go, if you lose to Arizona and the winless streak hits 12, and you're still not you're still not gaining points. Like, let's assume that the Vegas game wasn't a win, right? And assume it's not a, hey, you get a point loss. It's not the loser point loss. It's nothing again for the 9th time in 11 games, because only 2 of those, like that. I said this during the losing streak. The difference between the 10-game losing streak 4 seasons ago, where they still made the playoffs later that year, was 5 of those games went to overtime. And in addition to the 5 where, hey, listen, you're in an extra session somewhere, whether it's overtime or a shootout, you're one good play away from making it a win.
And obviously, you're getting a point.
They played, okay, they had a shootout loss against Winnipeg. They had the lead with a minute to play. They gave up the tying goal with 40 seconds left or something like that, 50 seconds left. Okay, that's one. They led multiple games during that stretch by 2 goals.
Yep.
So you're in a position where it's not like you're sitting here playing the game that you played against the Devils and you're losing 3-0. And you're never in the game, or you're losing to Tampa and it's 7-1 and you're never in the game. You were in games because you would go ahead 3-1, 4-2, going to the 3rd period in some cases, and you'd find a way to lose from there, but you were in the game. It's not like it was a team that we sat there and sure, at the time, it's Dave Hackstall coaching the team, and the noise was loud. Yes. Yep. Should they make a change? Should they do this? And they stuck to their guns that year because for them, it's tough luck. We're there, but we're not finishing the job.
Right.
As opposed to nothing's going right from start to finish. That was the difference. That's why this change, I think, was made when it was. But if they lose the game to Vegas in regulation and then go on and play Arizona, if you don't win that game, and especially if you don't get points, which means that you've lost 10 of 12 in regulation, 12 in a row, obviously.
I think
you're looking ahead to...
I think you might have seen a change. I think teams are changing kind of how they think about in-season trades and getting guys for longer than just the 20 games after the trade deadline. I think you would have seen Chuck Fletcher seriously start pursuing a trade, and like a fairly major trade.
I believe there's some part of him that's tried to some extent, not...
Like, I think Rasmus Ristolainen would be gone. I think somebody like that. I don't necessarily know if Claude Giroux's gone, because, again, you do want to see him hit some of those milestones we talked about earlier in the show in your jersey. But I think some of the mid-level guys would start looking and gone.
Well, and here's the thing, right? You're going to get to a point, and it might be very soon, let's be real. You're going to get to a point very soon where you have to make a decision on what you're really trying to do here. Look, I think that for everything that I see, the mindset is we're not out of it. We can come back. We can be in the playoffs. And from a player standpoint, why shouldn't it be? But in that, to me, as a coach, as a general manager, if you're going to be trying that, if that's your message, we're not done yet. We put together this team thinking we should make the playoffs, and we're still not out of it despite the losing streak, right? Like, if that's your mindset, at some point you're going to, in your head, sit there and this doesn't really apply in Claude Giroux's case because he is giving you something. I mean, I mentioned the points over the course of the 7 games, but how much do you become, seriously, if you really want to win, how much does it start to look like a charity case that somebody like Keith Yandel can make mistakes he makes, and you're leaving him in because of records within
about
reach?
To bring this up.
Like I get what you're trying to do, and you're trying to sit there and say, listen, the guy's been in the league forever. He hasn't missed a game in forever. But let's put it this way.
I think you remember me asking you. Sorry to cut you off here.
No, you're good.
I think you remember me asking you. I might have asked it on the show. I definitely asked you at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Will Keith Yandel's shortcomings be overlooked because of this chase for the record? And when Alain Vigneault was in charge, you said, No, I think Alain Vigneault will ice the best team, whether Keith Yandel's out there or not. And I don't necessarily know if Alain Vigneault ever really had another option, because you were missing Ryan Ellis for most of that time, and Cam York's not, At what point do we try Cam York? At what point does somebody different come in? At what point, Keith Yandel has been atrocious. It hasn't been medium. It hasn't been bad. It's been awful.
Here's where but here's where the situation is, and this is why I think I still stand by that thought. If it came down to it, Alain Vigneault has the difficult conversation and is that guy who goes, I can't play you. I believe that. But the problem is that when half of the year you're icing Nick Seeler on top of it, you go out and make a waiver claim for Kevin Connaughton just to get somebody else and who's more of a bottom six guy than Nick Seeler is.
Oh yeah.
And then think about this: at a time when you could consider calling up a guy like Cam York, he ends up on a COVID list in the minors. Right. So you not only have to wait to see what happens when he gets when he comes back, but you gotta give him some games. You can't just sit there and say, "Hey, by the way, you're back from the COVID list in the minors. Come up here right now." You haven't
skated with a team in 2 weeks? Okay, come play in the NHL.
Right, you can't do that. Zamula was hurt at the beginning of the year, so you could have gone that direction. Like he's been back for a little while, is my point. But the other issue is that the only thing that they were doing is also the same thing. They only were really skating. The Phantoms played 1 game in 2 weeks for a while.
Right, and
so it's hard to say play.
I don't even think it was because of them, right? It was mostly because their opponents just kept getting canceled.
York was the only one I know of who went on the list.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I didn't hear about huge major COVID issues in Lehigh Valley, but
no, they've been pretty good, all things considered. But
I haven't been following the Phantoms, but if Zamula is looking decent at all, looking like he's getting his legs back, I don't mind him at the NHL level in a bottom pair role.
Well, and see, but this is where I'm going, where it's like you can, because it's a guy in the minor leagues, you can almost lean on the excuse of, well, we're still giving him time. We're still giving him time. We're still giving him time. Oh, right. He broke the record. Now it's time. I think now it's become a charity case because here's the other hard part of it. We're reaching this realization, and I'm not trying to make it sound like he's been better than hear me out. I'm not trying to make it sound like Keith Yandel has played better over the last month and a half at some point where you quieted this for a while. There was nobody else. Legitimately, there was nobody else when the struggle started. There wasn't anybody else you could bring.
4 games into the season when Ryan Ellis disappears.
Well, it's Ellis disappears and Nick Seeler's got to come in and play, and then Nick Seeler's not very good either. So you're really stuck. You almost had to address him before you could address now Yandel's the guy who down to Connaughton's playing better than Yandel.
Connaughton's playing solid. I've been very happy with the Kevin Connaughton claim.
Oh, because he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. That's what I think it is. You know what I mean?
Role. Keith Yandel's still trying to be power play 1 Keith Yandel.
But that even bothers me because I look at the mistake he made in the Ottawa game and I go, this is really all you're here for.
That's the problem.
This is really the only thing
he's supposed to do right.
Right.
That's why he's here. He's a power play specialist. We brought him in to replace Ghost, basically.
Well, what's funny, and because if you ask Twitter, apparently, look, I'm not saying Twitter.
I'm not even bringing that up because I know he's been good for a bad Arizona team, but it. Nah.
No. I'm not talking. This had nothing to do with Ghost. It was a I was gonna say it's because if you ask Twitter, and I'm not saying Twitter's ignoring what Yandel's doing, but if you ask Twitter, Travis Sanheim's the worst defenseman on the team, and that's the farthest thing from the truth.
I think the first 2 weeks of the season he was bad.
Oh no, he was. But what I'm saying is,
and I think he's gotten better since then.
If you watch the last month, even during the bad losing streak,
Travis Sanheim has been good.
He's still been probably your best defenseman, and Ristolainen's not far behind.
He's also been very solid.
I'm not trying to say Ristolainen's perfect. I'm far from it, but there's an element there's games where I look at Ivan Provorov and I go, "What's up with you right now?" Right.
I feel like every year Flyers Twitter picks a defenseman to pick on, and for the longest time it was Andrew McDonald, and he deserved it. Fair enough.
It was Ghost for a while.
Then it was Ghost for a couple of years, and to be honest, for a large portion of that time, he also kind of deserved it. And now it's fallen to Travis Sanheim. And
for no good freaking reason, though.
Well, and I think it's because he had a bad first 2 weeks. And with Ghost not here, he's the problem. And for the first 2 weeks, I think he was a problem. I think there were more problems on the team than that, but he was a problem, and I think they've latched. Even though Travis Sanheim has gotten better, I think that's who we've decided is the bad defenseman this year, in air quotes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I hope that the goal against Ottawa, which very, very nice play, helps kind of quiet some of that.
Well, see, I don't even think it's just that, because he also started the week off by scoring his first goal of the season. So
right, so he's picking it up.
Well, I want you to think about a couple of people then over this little stretch, because Sanheim's on the board twice now with goals. How about some Oscar Lindblom, who in the last 7 games since the coaching change was made, all of a sudden has 6 points?
Love me some Oscar Lindblom.
Like, I think 5 of weeks. I think I said that right. 5 of his 6 points have come since the coaching change.
Something like that.
So you've got 5 points in 7 games after getting 1 in 21, 22.
Cam Atkinson with a hat trick against New Jersey, but he's been excellent all season, so that's not really much of a surprise.
But you know what you're getting to, and to an extent anyway, you're starting to get the clarity, because a couple weeks ago I go on the air and I mentioned the thing about, listen, I think you just need to kind of admit what kind of team you're going to be for a few years, which means like embrace that you're going to be kind of a bad team,
right? And
start to build it back up, and the question becomes, well, what do you do with all these guys who you're locked into contracts with? And my answer to start with was, well, for some of them, you're stuck. Like, you're stuck with the Kevin Hayes contract, whether you like it or not. Yep. And Kevin Hayes is clearly not healthy 100%. It's obvious.
No.
So, like, if you're looking for, like if you're sitting here trying to ask yourself what the positive of his game are, listen, the team still feeds off of when he does produce, because there's no doubt about that.
He's an energy guy, for sure.
But even that's down in his play. Like I don't know.
This year plus 4 more years.
Well, here's my issue with this year in particular. One, I don't think he's fully healthy, because they brought him back. He got into another situation, missed more time, came back really quickly after the second go round.
Right. And then, I think he rushed back a little bit because Derek Brassard had just gone out, and he was looking at the team and going, "Oh no!"
Right. But I also think that there's a mental aspect to it, because it's everything. It's guy hasn't been healthy that much over the course of the year. Wasn't healthy last year to finish out the year.
He hasn't gotten to get into a groove.
Obviously all the stuff with his brother. And then on top of it, by the way, like, throw in the fact that one of the only coaches you've really ever known, because he played, all those years with the Rangers, Alain Vigneault's your coach. Come to Philadelphia, Alain Vigneault's going to be your coach from day one. Now that's different.
Yep.
It's just a whirlwind for him. And what are you supposed to do in that mental state when also you're a fun-loving type of guy, and quite possibly with where the league is right now, they're telling you don't do anything, like, what kind of mental state are you going to be in? You know what I mean? So,
right.
Like, I think it's just a rough year for him, period. And he's trying his best to bear through it. But I look at like others, like the question was like brought up about Atkinson. You just made that trade. You got 3 more years beyond this one. I don't think that that's such a bad thing, though. Like, I look at what he's still able to do, and I go, you can still get something from him. He's a spark plug. Like, he does still bring you something. Like, he's not leading the team in goals for no reason. Although, I don't know if he's actually leading the team in goals. Is he tied again? I think he's tied. No, it's close. Giroux's one behind him, but it's close. But he is giving you point production. He's second in points. You're 29 games into the season. He's at 20 points. He's not going to be a point per game player per se, because of the fact that he's more the goal scoring type than he is the setup guy. But the numbers actually even out pretty well. He's got 12 goals and 8 assists. That's a good even ratio, all things considered.
Yeah, you're happy about that.
Well, because he's not Claude Giroux. Claude Giroux's at 25 points. He's got 11 goals, but you expect the assist number to be higher, always with Claude Giroux.
Sure.
Like, to be honest, Atkinson was one who set up the goal for Sanheim in overtime. I kind of thought it would have been nice, given the uncertainty of, and we got to get into the uncertainty of next week and then wrap us up. But
yeah,
given the uncertainty of next week, it would have been nice if Giroux would have assisted on the goal. You know what I want? You know what would have been nice, because I've written it down enough times in previews that I'd like to stop writing it down because it's been a milestone watch thing for like 3 weeks
Ever.
at this point. Travis Konechny needs 1 goal to get to 100.
He's sitting on 99.
And at the time, as we're watching this thing, Claude Giroux is 1 point from passing Bill Barber for second and 1 assist away from 600 in his career.
Wow.
And you're sitting there going, just do it,
Just set him up. Just hit all the milestones all at once.
Make it happen right here. And
multiple birds, one stone. Giroux to Konechny.
Although actually in hindsight, and maybe players don't care about this stuff, but you give out the puck, you take the picture and all that stuff like that.
Who gets it? They saw it in half.
Right, exactly.
They probably would, honestly.
Then
you still get to hold up your tape picture with the half puck, and you get your tape on the half of the puck.
But you know what would be not funny, but you know what would be perfect for this too? It's setting itself up nicely that Drew's going to have one that's going to have a lot of writing on it, because it'll be, here's 600 assists and second all time in franchise history all at the same time, in points.
It might have to go on top for that one.
Which would be really, but it would be really cool. And there will be he just literally, I don't even know if we mentioned it last week on last week's show. In the Vegas game, he passes Bobby Clark for first all time in power play points. Yep. So I mentioned that too in the takeaway, because there's another milestone. So he's already gotten to that one. He's chasing 1,000 games. He's chasing 900 points. He's going to move into second all time.
It's a big milestone season for Claude Giroux.
Right. The resume keeps growing for him. Even if it's not going to be the best year, even if it doesn't end the way we think it is, it's going to continue to increase the resume that in 10 years, when you look back, you're going to look at him and you're going to say, you're going to change your mind about what you think of him. I wish
the Flyers were organizationally in a spot where they could go for it this year. Just really throw everything at the wall and turn this into the best season of Claude Giroux's life. And they're not. And I'm certainly not suggesting it, because I don't think they're there. I don't think that would be a good decision. Mm-hmm. But my God, get this man a cup. And I want it to be here. And if the season goes how we kind of think it's going to go, then they're not going to be that team. And if that's the case, I want him to have his best chance. And this is when I want it to happen, because I want him to go. I want him to win his cup. First of all, I want to get a haul for him, because he's going to be one of the bigger targets on the trade market, more than likely. I want to get an absolute pile for him. He goes to Colorado or Boston or Toronto or Tampa or whoever wants to add him, whoever wants to go make a cup run, he'll get to pick, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being one of those 4 teams, by the way.
There's one key caveat to whichever team it is, and he might get the choice of where he would like to try to go, but
he ultimately does have the choice, because he does have that
because he has to waive the clause. I get it, but right. You can't, if you do move him, you can't come out of that deal with anything less than at least the first round pick of the team that you're trading with. You cannot get less than that. Not for a guy who...
I think you get a pick and a prospect, honestly. I think you get a first-round pick and a good prospect for Claude Giroux.
Well, because you cannot trade, A, your captain, and B, guy who's still 25 points in 29 games, so right up there, near point per game pace.
Producing at a Tier 1 NHL level.
Right, you can't go into that and come away with anything less than what you deserve in that package. We can sit here and you can look at every other player that they have that they could move. We could argue all day about Ristolainen's case for what he could bring back in a contract year, given what his contract is. You cannot and listen, sweeten like I said from the beginning, sweeten the deal if you have eating salary. Not going to affect you any for the rest of this year.
You're going to eat salary, because Comcast, the money doesn't particularly matter to Comcast, and getting that cap number down around 4 is much more palatable for a playoff team than 8.
Well, yeah, I get that. No, I mean,
you have to retain salary and maximize return on Claude Giroux. 1 year left, absolutely.
I mean, it's not even 1 year at that point. It's
well, that's what I'm saying.
It's 2 months. Deal with it for that small stretch.
Right.
All right. Well, let's shift gears really quick as we wrap it up and get into back to this big story, because
this has kind of been an overtone of the show, and we do kind of apologize if it's sounded kind of negative at times, but things are pretty bad in the NHL right now. We've talked about it a little bit. There are 5 teams currently shut down through at least Christmas. I believe, Kevin, you said in our group text yesterday that 50% of the league schedule between Saturday and Sunday this past weekend were postponed. Yeah. And those were kind of full schedule weekend type days, and you're losing half your games on a very important weekend right before Christmas.
Right. So let me look ahead good. Really. No, it's not. So let me
Things
look ahead
bad.
really quick.
Yeah.
So you obviously know the drill by now when it comes to this particular week of the season in normal circumstances, and it's still the same no matter what. There are no games scheduled from Friday through Sunday. The 24th, 25th, and 26th is a complete freeze on everything. It stops. The league stops.
I wish the NHL would do like one showcase game on Christmas, but I get why they don't. They don't want to compete with the NBA. I understand.
Well, and this, to be honest, in a season like this, it's even worse.
That's
because,
fair.
Well, or I shouldn't say season. This particular year, it's worse because Christmas falls on a Saturday. So now you're not just competing with the NBA. The NFL is on too.
Right.
Like, good luck. Like, you don't want to be like at that point in time. What they also like to do is, I think what they like to do is look at that particular thing. Like, you're going to go back and forth over the diversity in your league from country to country is going to be like there's Canadian Thanksgiving, there's American Thanksgiving. So not everybody's doing the same thing on either day. Yes, Thanksgiving Day in America, there is no hockey on. Like, it is a complete day off, but like, let's be real, like, it doesn't make a difference.
I would also really love if they made that day like Canadian teams playing each other rivalry day, right? Give me Jets versus Canucks and Leafs versus Senators. You know, give me some all Canada games on Thanksgiving, on American Thanksgiving. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
I think that the NHL tries to focus an awful lot on those holidays, though. Like,
I think they tend to focus a lot on not getting dumpstered in the ratings by the NFL.
Well, that too. Like, well, I think that's the thing. Like, America, like at this point in time, the best that the NHL could do if they wanted to really do a showcase is football's got Well, no, but it's this. Football's got Thanksgiving. There's 3 games on Thanksgiving Day when there's nothing else on at all. Everything else is off. Christmas Day, you get the NBA showcase. There's like 5. I think there's always 5 games every Christmas Day, right?
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, you've got New Year's Day, Winter Classic all the time.
That's
and
fair.
You could stack the rest of the lineup with, hey, listen.
But you're going against bowl games.
Well, that's true.
You're going against bowl games, and there's some history there.
Well, that's true. But that might be that's probably your best bet outside of it. Like,
you're probably right.
I mean, because how much more are you supposed to compete with? There's not exactly a holiday that works. Like
okay,
baseball's got the freaking 4th of July.
You ready?
What, Halloween showcase?
Valentine's Day.
Nah, see, hang on. You can't do that.
Why not?
Because this particular year, Valentine's Day, it is. This particular year, I think Valentine's Day is the day after the Super Bowl.
Oh my God! Of course it is.
So you can't even compete with that. Like, again, not you. So you're just, sometimes you've also just got to probably take your rightful place where you belong, kind of where you are, and there's not a good day for you to be showcased when you're number 4 on the list. Like, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to what I was getting into. So we know that there's no games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? To this point, let me go to Monday. There is one game is already postponed for Monday. This is from a while ago. This didn't come out recently. So Detroit, Colorado is off on Monday, and that's due to Colorado shut. But that's due to Colorado shutdown. We knew that. There are still 4 games scheduled for Monday, which isn't out of the ordinary, by the way. That's 4 out of 5. Everything's still pretty much on because every team that I'm looking at, no real issues as far as I can tell. Okay, I mean, Edmonton's had a few pop up.
They've been
Montreal just had
recently.
one. Montreal just had one go on the list from yesterday, but again, it's not. The hard part with doing this is that there's one element where we look at the number of players that are entering protocol and go, it feels like it's headed toward a shutdown period. Excuse me. But there's an element to the number from each individual team. Like, there's teams out there like I look at Tuesday's Flyers Capitals game and I go, the reason why I'm like paying close attention to the status of that at this point is because The Flyers are off today. We're not going to know anything further until tomorrow, probably, because it's going to be the next time they get tested. You're not getting tested on an off day.
Right.
If you say it's a complete off day, you're not getting tested. So they are not getting tested today, as far as I know. They will get tested tomorrow. They'll have a practice. Let's put it this way, somebody will pay clear attention who attends, because I won't be there physically, but someone will pay close attention to, hey, did so-and-so get pulled from the ice in the middle of practice? You know, because that's probably how it would work. You'll get tested in the morning, and you'll wait the results, and by the time you're on the ice for practice, somebody's gonna tell you something. You know what I mean?
And right now, as far as the active roster, it's just Max Willman in protocol right now, correct?
Max Willman and Morgan Frost.
I'm sorry.
Well, okay, so Max Willman and Morgan Frost are in COVID protocol. Carter Hart was not available for Saturday because of an undetermined illness. That was what was said, which very well in that case could be, hey, one more test, and if it comes back the way that it needs to, he's in protocol. We'll have to see.
Right. Well, and obviously as of this recording, we haven't heard anything on that yet, and like you said, we're pretty unlikely to hear stuff today, so...
Right. Well, we were unlikely to hear stuff from the Flyers standpoint today. Well, the Capitals have a game tonight, which means that they are in the middle of going through this process already. TJ Oshie is out tonight. He's not available. He's in COVID protocol. He becomes the fourth guy who's in protocol. Now, caveat, one player who is in protocol is technically back and working, is able to be on the ice with the team. That's how long he's been in protocol.
Right.
Garnet Hathaway has been in protocol for probably the better part of somewhere like in the range of at least 10 days.
God, so he's going to come back and be irritated if he ends up not playing tonight and playing on Tuesday. He's going to be a pill.
I don't even know if he's close to doing that, because they even said he didn't stay on the ice for any extra work. I don't know what the deal is. Like, we'll have to see. Anyway, you got his situation. And then they have two others who are out. I think Tom Wilson's one of them, by the way.
Hathaway will be extra fired up because he's got to be the big toughie.
No, but it could be interesting if you take those two off the ice. If Wilson
if you take
and
those
Hathaway,
two off the ice, that changes the size of the Washington Capitals pretty dramatically.
Sure. And they also have two players in their lineup who just recently came back, I think. Trevor Van Riemsdyk just recently came back from protocol, and somebody else did.
Good old TVR.
Yeah. To be honest, and look, forgive me if the names are escaping me. There's so much news that comes out every minute. It's hard to process and remember it all off the top of your head for who's in, who's out.
Well, you know what? I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it because...
Well, hold on. I was still going into a couple things with this to go forward because...
Yeah.
Well, because here's the problem. If Oshie entered today, it's obviously still present in their grouping here. I mean, even going into yesterday for the Flyers, if Willman entered the list on Saturday and Hart was unavailable on Saturday, you're not out of the woods yet either.
No.
Which means that at this point in time,
those Monday tests are going to be interesting.
What's going to be interesting is this. Right now, because right now the Flyers have two in protocol, one who's unavailable at the moment kind of thing. You're in a spot right now where it's wait and see. And then you also have to ask yourself, is there a number that's going to make them pull the plug on this the way they've pulled the plug on other games? Like, what's the number? You got teams out there right now who are forced to go out there and play with less than full rosters because, and that's honestly where the league's screwing things up more. They're not screwing up by saying, "Hey, we're going to cancel this game."
They screwed up by not allowing the taxi squad. They thought they were out of the woods. They thought they could get by with not having the taxi squad of guys who could just come in and out without having to go through blah 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 waivers and salary cap reasons and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The NHL thought they were out of the woods because everyone was vaccinated and that they weren't going to need it. And they need it. And it's too late to implement it now. I don't believe you're going to implement it halfway through the season.
No, I think they need to be able to pivot is the point.
Oh, I'm hoping they are. I'm hoping they come back from this holiday break and they've kind of learned their lesson and go, all right, let's go taxi squad now. Thank you.
All right. So I already mentioned, there's 4 out of 5 games are being played on Monday for right now. There are 10 games scheduled for Tuesday, and as of right now, 6 of them are on.
Okay.
Right. And again, no surprises here when you look at who's postponed. It was already determined because they were shut down for the week.
We have teams who have been shut down for the week. Right. Nothing crazy.
So Boston, Nashville, Florida, Calgary, they were all on the schedule for Tuesday. Those games are now off. No surprises. 4 games on the Wednesday schedule. 3 of them still on. Colorado again with a game that got postponed.
Shut down, right.
But again, only 3 more anyway on Wednesday. Thursday is going to be the real interesting one for me right now because I looked. There's 15 games originally on the schedule, so all but 2 teams in the league are playing that night. That's it. So who does not have a game on Thursday anymore based off of this?
Right.
3. So ironically, this made it easy. You pull a game like Florida, Nashville, which both teams are shut down. It works out. Colorado, Boston also works out, and then Calgary, Seattle. So I'd have to really scroll through to figure out the other 2 teams that are not on the schedule. Period, because I'm not going to go look through every single one here. But that still means you've only postponed 3 out of 15. So you still have a 12-game slate for Thursday. That's obviously your big. That's obviously your big day. But
as of right now.
Well, as of right now, and here's the other key to that. That's your biggest day of the schedule that's left, and it's also, of course, the one that's the furthest out. Like, we're talking Sunday right now. It's one thing to look
at this point.
It's one thing to look at the rest of today's schedule and say, listen, you have 4 out of 8 games on the schedule still on. They're probably going to go through with it because at the end of the day, right now, I think the methodology behind what you're doing is there's still 4 games on the schedule today out of the 8 that were originally scheduled. And if we can get those 4 games in, it's 4 less that need to be postponed and rescheduled.
Right. And I think the NHL is just kind of gritting their teeth and trying to get through Thursday because then you get a couple days off and hopefully that kind of helps alleviate some things a little bit. But
hold on.
Okay. Well, as we start heading towards a wrap, we're getting a last minute news update here.
3 more going on the list from Columbus.
Jeez.
So that just came through. I don't even know what the running number is now. I'd have to go look, but Jack Roslovic, Boone Jenner, Gabriel Carlson, all on the list now.
Tough.
Now they don't have a game today, by the way. I don't think.
Okay.
Or do they? Oh no, they do. Or nope, that's tomorrow. Sorry, that is tomorrow. Okay. So they don't have a game today. But they have a game tomorrow against Buffalo, and now 3 players are in there. So, and they canceled their practice today. So
okay. Yeah, you're seeing a lot of teams cancel practices once some positive tests start popping up, just as a precaution.
The thing to me, this is where I'll probably leave everything for the show this week because I don't want to make this too much longer. But, it was inevitable what was going to happen as things rolled around in March 2020, and it didn't even hit yet when I watched the last game that I watched in person that year, which was the Boston game on March 10th.
Right.
Even then, it was things are a little different, but it wasn't that different.
Right.
Building was full, good competitive game.
Life hadn't dramatically changed yet.
Right. It was the next night. The team was getting ready to go to Tampa Bay for the Thursday. It was going to be a Thursday night game, but it was Wednesday night. And the NBA is talking about postponing games because they got a case. And as soon as that happened,
it's over.
I was legitimately sick to my stomach the whole night because of the fact that I'm like, I think we're just going to see them shut the whole thing down right now. Like everything else in the world is maybe we need to take a couple weeks off. Yep. Let's shut it all down. And here,
and then Thursday morning we get the news that the Flyers didn't leave for Tampa.
No, they did.
Oh, they did.
They were there. They were already in Tampa, but they basically just turned them right back around and said,
Right. I remember something happened with their travel.
So,
and that was one of the first indications we had that things were going to get shut down.
Right, but here's the thing with that. Like, as much as it was like you were sick to your stomach about it, we got through the next 4 months as they were, kind of just taking it easy. It was as much of a problem as it was. We got through that. Everything started to come back, even in bubble form, and it was there. They finished the season out. You gave them full marks for finishing out the season the way that they had to, and you got to start over. And even last year, you put new things in place. It was very different, but you still played, and the thing that I keep describing it is you have right now a situation where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And the reason that I say is because all signs are pointing towards, especially now. Okay, here you go. This was from last night. This is from 23 hours ago. I just saw it pop up. So as of 23 hours ago, there were 72 players were put in COVID protocol in the last 5 days, which is roughly 10% of the league.
That's a problem.
So now you're getting closer to 15, obviously, and there's got to be a number in mind where you just say we got to stop this, shut it all down. And this is what I'm saying. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. Because if you do, it can be the right call in the here and now. I don't disagree with that. It can be the right call to say we've got to stop this. This is not right. Shut it down. But I don't think that delay, like all you're doing to me in 2 weeks' time, is delaying what's going to continue to happen. Like, I don't think there's any sign of this slowing down. You just need to know what to do. Like to be honest, it's almost going to be hard for you to come back from a shutdown, which is, I think, why they're trying to push through, because
especially
their thought
this
is
early in the season. The main difference 2 years ago is that you had 70 games played. You could go straight to the playoffs. You can't go straight to the playoffs on a 30-game season.
Well,
game season.
All right. Well, it was two things. One, you're right, but two, it was everybody else was going to do it too. Like all of the league came into agreement. It's like, we can't do this right now. Period. So you took the whole spectrum away. Like, the NFL just adjusted their protocols too. Do you think they're postponing games, but they're not postponing games like, hey, we're going 3 weeks down the line?
Well, here's the thing with the NFL is they have changed their testing policy to basically as soon as you stop testing positive, you're good.
I know.
And the NHL will not be allowed to do that just because of the border.
Hold on. That's not the way that I read the testing policy. I thought I was reading the testing policy in the NFL as, if you don't have symptoms, we're not going to test you. You could be positive. We're not going to test to find out.
That's also the case. But like, even when you are getting tested and when you do have symptoms, the second you stop testing positive, you're done. And the NHL just, even if they do implement something like that, they're still going to have to get tested every single time they go to Canada, symptomatic or not.
Well, that brings a whole nother dynamic into it, because right now they probably shouldn't even be going across the border if that's the case, which is...
I wonder if the Canadian government forces the NHL's hand in terms of a shutdown.
Oh, wow. So, no, I'm not responding to you. This is what I'm reading on Twitter. For now, the Blue Jackets are holding a morning skate in Columbus tomorrow at 10 a.m. and then traveling to Buffalo for their game at 7.
Things are bad, guys.
Well, no, as in, we're treating this like the minors, where you're going to practice at home and go. And obviously it says for now. Look, there's no harm to getting to tomorrow and saying, listen, for a week we just have to stop the whole thing. There isn't harm to it, but I don't know that you're. If your goal by shutting it down is it's going to stop the spread for now. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You know, like, and I say this meaning you could still have this happen no matter what. But I think that now that you have enhanced protocols back in place and you're trying to reduce contact and all this type of stuff, maybe the best method here is to just stop for the week. Well, get to next Monday. Like, it's 2 games here, and I don't know that, you know.
Well, and you certainly don't have to mandate it, but if you shut down for a week, teams, I imagine, would probably also be very interested in encouraging their players to go get their booster while they have a couple days to recover.
Well, and that is another aspect of it, because what you also can do is you're taking away the, I'll get it when it's convenient within my team's schedule aspect.
That is something that can make an actionable change towards slowing the spread once a season resumes. I'm not saying it stops it. I'm certainly not saying it makes all the cases go away. I understand the realities of the vaccine and the third booster and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But it helps.
Well, and here's the other thing about it to an extent as well. Like, there's a level of this at some point where, look, you may always, no matter how hard you try, you may always have 15, 20, 25 players in protocol at any point. Like, it's going to happen. You have rosters of 20-some-odd players. There's always a potential for every team to be dealing with 1 or 2. Next thing you know, that means 25 players are in COVID protocol. There's always that potential. This is now over 100 in a span of 5 days. It's a huge spike. It's something along the lines of nearing 15% of the league's active players.
Yep.
You've already taken in, and let's this way, you've already thrown in players who are not positive on that list, because you've already taken. Calgary had 2 guys left. but they still are off just the way the same 20 that are on protocol are. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't change anything. And Calgary to this point, since shutting down, has come back, I think, 2 days in a row with we have had no more additional positive. Not that there's many that left to test positive anyway, but maybe what their point is that no subsequent positive tests, and they're not necessarily sitting here telling you, like, they're still shut down until Christmas. Right. So they're not necessarily telling you, hey, by the way, maybe somebody also snapped out of it and they got a negative test, and we're feeling better about the direction they're going. You know, and another thing, good news on the front that by all accounts nobody is seriously ill,
which is good, right? And even
there's
last year we had we had some Marco Rossi. There were a couple of names of guys who were kind of sick.
Look at Ristolainen.
Right, but thankfully,
Ristolainen had some serious side effects from all this, serious long-term effects from being sick with it.
Yep. Thankfully, the vaccine seems to be, even if it's not quite as effective as at preventing the spread right now, it does seem to at least be having its intended effect of lessening symptoms, making it less dangerous, and that's good.
Right, and so we'll just see where it goes. Like, the bottom line of what we're trying to say here is not even about the rest of the league. It's just the Flyers have 2 games on the schedule still for this week as we are talking.
Yep.
I don't believe anything is going to happen today because of the fact that if it did, we'd already know by now. Like, let's put it this way. We're going to finish this up, and within 3 hours' time, 2 of the 4 games on the schedule are going to be off and running. And I wouldn't doubt that the rest are in play, at this point. But what happens? But what happens when you get to Monday and Tuesday and Thursday? Like, that's what the question is. So just don't hold to anything. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, look, they moved the Eagles game in Philadelphia to the same time as the Flyers game.
Yeah, get there early.
If the Flyers game didn't happen, I wouldn't care.
You wouldn't be super duper sad about not having to sit through that traffic?
Well, look, I don't care. It's not the traffic. It's
parking.
It's not even that, because I've done it before. It's just, like I said, the complaint is not that type of stuff. It's, if you're complaining about that type of stuff, to me, it's because you haven't done it in 2.5 years, and you just don't want to do it. That being said, there's like I said, when you know that it feels like things are not right, like I look, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I didn't enjoy myself being at a game on Saturday night, watching the Flyers and Senators to an extent. But as I got ready to leave, I didn't get myself ready to go until like an hour before I would typically start to. Like, over the fact that I just didn't want to assume anything. Like, let's this way, they decided 2 hours before the Thursday game in Montreal that, fans are not coming anymore. Yep. You just don't want to take a chance on anything changing last minute, that I'm going to start to drive down there and am I going to get there and be told turn around? You never know. I'm going to be doing the same. I don't even think it's going to come to Tuesday. If I wake up on Tuesday morning and there's a game on the schedule, I think it's happening.
Right. I agree.
But I think that Monday's a very crucial day for this, because by the end of the day, you're going to see more happening. You're going to see more come up, and it's a question about what happens next. It's just, where do we go from here? What happens next? The Olympics should be out of the picture, by the way. The Olympics should be totally out of the picture, but it's probably not going to be the case.
Well, where we go from here, because we got to head towards an exit here. We're
done.
Go from here is that we're going to be off next week. So we're going to take this opportunity, have a good holiday. Yeah. Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. Enjoy your holiday season. If not, even if you just have a day off of work, enjoy it. And other than that, follow us. This show will be back in 2 weeks. What's that? Or are we going to do a show in 2 weeks? That'll be the 2nd, right?
Yeah,
we can do a show in the 2nd.
No, I don't see any reason why not. The only thing that's going to be a struggle for me is coming off of a 10:30 game the night before, but it is over a long weekend, so
we'll figure it out. We will be back on the 2nd with our show. You'll be able to find it where you found this one, where you find all our shows: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, sportstalkphilly.com, all over the place. Make sure to follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Follow the show at had a mind blank there for a second. Follow the show at YWT Podcast. I'm doing this in a different order, and it just threw me off. Follow Sports Talk PHL. Follow Flyerdelphia. We'll keep you updated on what's going on with the NHL season and what's going on with the show here. So, Kevin, before we get out of here, anything else?
You said it all.
All right, fantastic. Have a good holiday season, and we'll see you.